Hello, lovely people. Welcome to another episode of the Filming Life Unfiltered podcast. I am Kylie. I'm here today without Courtney, but with a really, really special guest, a extremely talented filmmaker and photographer from Boston in the US. She's also a Filming Life Pro and one of our deeply valued mentors in the Filming Life Academy. And her name is Amy Murgatroyd. Thank you for coming and talking to us, Amy.
I appreciate being here. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to extend this conversation.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, in addition to all of that I just said, Amy was also one of our speakers at the very first Unfiltered Retreat that took place in August 2023 here in Australia in the Blue Mountains. Amy traveled all the way from the US, and I know that it's a very long trip from the East Coast. It's a good 24 hours plus of travel. So yeah, we were so thankful that you agreed to make the trip and that you came. And I think, the talk that you gave just really, it was just amazing. It was our closing talk. So it was a perfect way to end the retreat. But yeah, what did you think of Australia, Amy? How was your trip? Because I know you had some holidays afterwards, didn't you?
Yeah, sure did. Yeah, we did a little traveling around with another couple that joined us. Yeah, Unfiltered just blew me away. I really didn't come with expectations. My only expectation was to come and kind of be poured out on behalf of the attendees as a speaker, to just be really present with them in the portfolio reviews and the editing demo, as well as my talk, and not to really arrive with any needs or expectations about what I could learn. And yet I left like a wet sponge. Like I had just absorbed so much from that time. And the learning, Kylie, was so unique to the retreat, and that it really wasn't geared for new photographers. I have attended so many photography conferences, and have felt that like were a little played out for me, that maybe had maximized most of the learning, in all honesty, and that now I'm in that practice phase of life and business where you just like, you just grind, you just like keep at your art, improving it. What I appreciate is just the diversity of speakers that you brought to that table, and how much the speakers learned from the attendees. The meals were like, the learning never stopped, because we had these community meals and we were constantly sitting with new people. You're getting exposure to business practices, and just approaches to client experience and other things. And it was never these superficial conversations. Like they were just those like deeply enriched conversations, the kinds that leave you wanting more and leave you feeling stretched. And so I left blown away. Like, never did I expect as a speaker to come away with such like a full heart and full head. And
well, I think even for Courtney and I, it ended up being more than we expected. Like it was, and I think, as you said about how it wasn't really for beginners, and that was really intentional on our part. We, there are so many workshops and things out there for beginners that are, teaching people how to shoot, or, for people who are in maybe like only their first few years running a business. There's so much out there for people, but there's really not much at all for those of us who have been in business for 5, 6, 7, 10 years, and it's really hard sometimes to find support, because a lot of the groups on Facebook and around the place are geared for those more beginner people, and so it's hard to find the community and the support that you need when you do get further along in your business, and it comes these questions that, you know, aren't really relevant to people in year 1 or year 2, but people in year 6, 7, 8, 9 can, you know, help you with or relate to. So we were really intentional with that. We really wanted to make it for people who have kind of been there for a while. They've been doing it, and want to stretch themselves, and maybe potentially, you know, when you do reach that point, like once you get to year 6, year 7, year 8, you know, you do start to sometimes question what you're doing. You know, you've been doing the same thing, and yes, it's working, and maybe it's successful, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's stopping being so successful or whatever. But you do start to, you know, as we grow as humans and our businesses evolves and we evolve, you might start to think, oh, you know, is this really what I want to do? Do I want to keep doing things like this? Do I want to change them? And you know, often when you're so in the thick of running your business and you're busy, you don't get a chance to step back and think about that. So we really wanted that retreat to give people that space and that time, and expose them to different thoughts and ideas, and just have the opportunity to sit with other photographers who are at your same level, or, you know, very close, a little bit ahead of you or a little bit behind you, and have those conversations. And we were very intentional too with the meals. We wanted every single meal to be included in the price of the ticket, so that everybody would come together and sit, because we know from our own experiences that that's where some of the best conversations happen. That's where some of
Absolutely
the
true.
best learning happens.
Yeah, that's where you're
And
processing what you heard. Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
And even
And I
if you're
think,
not talking about business and you just talk, like, you know, everybody that was there was, you know, or just about everybody had children at
mm,
one age or another. Like the age range of the children of people who were there were quite large. So it was really great to also get that perspective of what
wow.
it's like to be a photographer and a mum in business, and
Yes.
how that affects your children or your parenting, or, you know, just how it goes in terms of documenting your own life when your children are at varying ages. It was just
Really.
such,
Yeah.
so great. Like the conversations were
It felt like
incredible. That I think,
it felt like a sisterhood. And I really do. I think, like attracts like. And so I credit a lot of that to you and Courtney, and the type of artists you attract, like the empathetic thinking, deeply feeling artist. And yeah, each of those dear women, I feel like my souvenirs now, that I got
yeah.
just like, I take them home. I literally brought them home in my heart to United States. And it's honestly the last and possibly the only retreat I'll ever, not the last I hope to return, but it would be the only retreat I could see myself attending at this point, because it just set that bar so high for me in terms of meeting felt needs I didn't know I had.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that was a big theme of it. I think a lot of people said the same thing. They're like, I didn't realize
Mm-hmm.
the things that I needed
Mm-hmm.
until I came, and then I was getting it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of pressure now with 2024. Obviously, we're just about to launch tickets next week. So for those who are listening and are not sure, it's the end of October while we're
Go.
chatting. Putting that in there so that if you're listening to this later on, you're just like, hang on a minute, what's going on? Yeah, so we are gearing up to launch tickets for next week, and Courtney's been in the US for the last few weeks, so this week is going to be this week, and early next week will be a mad scramble of, finalizing plans and getting everything ready. But we're so excited to just provide that experience for people again, and not just for people who are new, who didn't come to the first one, but for those who are going to come back as well. We know that a lot of people really, really, they've added that as now their annual thing to the calendar. So we're really excited to, have that experience again. And like, I can't wait. I know Courtney can't wait. We're both so excited.
I know. And I'll just put out there, if you live in this States, like budget for this. If it means you only attend, one retreat or conference in the next 2 years, make it this one. I think the travel's so worth it. You'll see a corner of the world that is just brilliant and beautiful, and be so glad you did.
Yeah.
So glad
I traveled to the US for a conference, and it was definitely like
there it is.
one of the best investments I ever made. Like, hands down. So one of the things that I think really set the tone for the retreat was the speakers that we had and the things that they spoke about. and, having the speakers involved, like the speakers weren't just speakers and they did their talk and then they disappeared. Like, you guys were active participants. You weren't just speakers, you were attendees as well. You're active participants. But I think, the talks that we gave were so interesting, and they were also different, but there was definitely like themes and threads that kind of connected them all.
I agree.
But I especially loved your talk, and I loved how your talk really affected everybody who listened and really opened some minds. So for a lot of people there, the concept that you spoke about was not something that they'd ever thought about or heard before. And in many ways, it's the complete
Countercultural,
opposite of
isn't it?
what we've
Yes.
been. Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
complete opposite of what we've been told
Yeah.
as business people and marketers and social media and all the rest of it. For me, it wasn't a new concept, because you and I have spoken about this before. We did a podcast together in
That's right.
2021 where that was the first time you kind of introduced me to this concept. And that conversation that we have had, and that way that you thought about clients has stuck with me. And so maybe just for those who haven't listened to that first one or weren't at the retreat, just explain, like, what was your talk about? It was called Moving Beyond the Ideal Client. So just give our listeners an idea of, what that means.
Yeah. I'll lead off by saying I am not contrarian by nature. Like, it is not like me at all to like go against the grain or be countercultural. I'd much rather sit in a corner and be silent and, silently disagree. And but there is just this melody in my heart, honestly, for our industry. And it's born on the back of some hard experiences that I forged for myself in business. I think we're all familiar with the ideal client. Like, as a photographer or filmmaker, you'd have to live under a rock not to have heard of it, right? And it's certainly open to interpretation, but it's just tossed around so lightly as a path to success and fulfillment in business. And I think I've just had, my story has been written such that it's caused me to call that into question. And I think this song for the industry is just to call us to consider, are we the ideal photographers and filmmakers for the client, to almost flip the narrative.
Yeah.
It's so easy to think about, who's that ideal client for me, but how often are we looking internally to question, are we the ideal, photographer for them? In the same way that marriage and parenting has been such a mirror to me in terms of my own flaws and blind spots, right? I feel like my business has been that. It's really shined a light into some sort of dark places. And we got to talk about that in my talk. It was collaborative, there's some interaction. And I really tried to come at it from this approach that, like, I'm just not ideal myself. I shared from my own failings. I listed the experiences I've had on the job and in sessions where I have fallen short of my clients' expectations. And yet it's my default as a human who wants what I want to hold expectations over my clients. And how unfair is that? I've disappointed theirs, and yet they're supposed to live up to mine. And I have to leave space here. I think the ideal client is actually a really useful tool for paid marketing. Like, that is a case where I absolutely ascribe to that ideal client notion. When I transitioned my photography business to films, you bet that those paid advertisements on Instagram and Facebook were checking boxes, right? Certain demographics.
Yep. Because you've got to target the right people, so it's shown to the right people.
Absolutely. Even places they lived, because I know that the investment of a film is something they could afford. Our starting assumption is that if they're a client, that you have really two expectations for them. By definition, a client sees value in your work and is willing to pay what you ask. In addition, I think they have to be courteous. Honestly, that's just a baseline assumption here, that client who's hired you is courteous, right? And respectful of you, of your
Yeah.
work, of your time, those things. So we all need those healthy boundaries. I think the breaking points in business are always going to be like how valued we feel as the, the artist, and how valued the client feels. So, so that sets it up a little bit. I think when just trying to flip the narrative a little bit and encourage us to look at the things that sort of undergird our notions of ideal client. And I am so grateful that I move in circles, honestly, where ideal client isn't defined in the old fashioned way. It's like when I first learned about ideal client, the photographer who taught the course defined her ideal client as the J. Crew clad yuppies of the world who are privately educated and live in this best suburb in town. And that was her actual distillation of her ideal client, verbatim. Right from her slide. And we've come so far. Aren't we just like more progressive and like open-minded and open-hearted? I'm so grateful that we don't sort of have that lowest common denominator. But the fact is that we do bring so many expectations into that relationship. I'm sure we can name them. Yeah.
I think one of the things that's missing sometimes when we talk about our ideal client, and probably particularly, maybe for those who are in the earlier stages of their business, it's probably how to go about it. You probably don't start to think about it till you've been in it for a little while. But I think sometimes what's missing from that conversation is about the ideal client is, yes, of course, obviously we're running businesses, so we want to make money, and it's about making money. And what's the point of doing it if you're not making money? Like, yes, 100%. Let's get that out of the way. Yes, we're here to make money.
100%.
But there's also that flip side of it that is like, with the ideal client, it comes back to like your why of why you do your job. And I think sometimes, that's an equation that we don't really think about it. And so we go, well, what is the purpose of my business? Who am I trying to serve? Because at the end of the day, it is a service business. We're serving customers. They're coming to us for a need, and we're serving that. And the people that will come to us for very different reasons. Based on, what they see that we're putting out there or whatever. And so I think that, your idea of thinking about, am I the ideal client am I the ideal photographer for them is such a great way to kind of flip that in your mind and think about, what kind of service do I want to provide? Who are the kinds of people that I want to serve? And how can I move beyond just that kind of, surface level or whatever to really get to the heart of, why it is that I run my business and what I'm really giving the people who come to me and spend their money with me. And I think that's really at the heart of what you talk about. It's how can I best serve the people that come for me? And so it's great to have this idea of, who those people might be or whatever. But it's also, I think, it's about having that open mind that maybe they don't look the way that I thought they would, or they don't live in the suburb that I thought they would. And, not letting those things limit you from saying yes to being able to provide a really great service that person can get from you. And
and I'll mention what we can get from them too, that when we have that sort of open-hearted, receptive posture, not only are we imprinting on the client, so often, we're thinking about how they make us look, but we're not thinking about how we imprint on them in ways that we can encourage their hearts, right? But in turn, like, we stand to learn something about ourselves in this process. Like my I don't use this term, but the non-ideal client by other, some standards. And by that, I mean, not just like, maybe they have small dark houses or live in the wrong part of town. I'm talking like my clients who don't express emotion easily, maybe aren't, super connected for the camera, not at all chill, but tightly wound, like I'm talking about these intangibles, the ones that feel really important to us as family filmmakers. I'm even taking to task, and here's why. I truly believe that it's my non-ideal clients, the ones I have to work a little harder for, that shape me in the most beautiful ways.
Yeah.
I gave the example in the talk of that client who I gave two examples of two clients, both ideal, both so very different, and
Yeah.
how the one has been so formative for me in two ways. She's was the first to embrace films, and she books me twice a year for a full-length film, which is mind-blowing. Who needs two a year? And then secondly, it was her experience with a photographer dad that has informed how I approach my girls, my growing girls, with a camera, and my willingness to set
Yeah.
it down to be present with them because of what she taught me. On the book, like on the surface, this would not be an ideal client in terms of like, it would feel like a mismatch. And yeah, oh, my heart embraces her. And what she's given me is far and above, more for me, more shaping than anything I gave her, which amounts to digital files and a, 6-minute
Yeah.
video this year. So yeah, I think my hope is in this whole conversation is not that anyone feels a hand slap or like a judgment. I think what I want is them, when they send that last gallery and they push back from their desk, I want them to have like the deepest fulfillment, knowing that their business fulfilled its purpose and brought,
Mm-hmm.
beauty and goodness to this world. And that's what I think we're all trying to do. No, never would I question motives. I think the photographers are working so hard this time of year. That here in the States, it's fall and we are just grinding right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Everybody is so well-intentioned. Like these photographers have beautiful hearts. They mean so well by their clients. I think in the execution of how we do our jobs, my business and somebody else's business would look pretty much identical, right? In the sort of
Yep.
like the respect offered even those non-ideal clients during a session when everything's unraveling, and we know what that's like. Things hit the fan fast in family, photography and
Yeah.
filmmaking. So I'm questioning down the road. I'm like, let's think about 10 years from now, how you're doing if you're approaching a session, expecting so that your clients bring so much. And we even talked in my talk about how are we really deserving of like 3 paragraphs of thanks from our clients? It sure feels nice, but even that's an expectation I've learned to take to task. And just before we started
It's
this
funny you
week,
say that
yeah.
because that was something that, I know I've struggled with. And I know a lot of
Oh,
photographers,
of
you send
course
a
we
gallery,
do.
you send a film, you don't
Yeah.
hear anything back sometimes
Oh,
for a long
films
time.
especially,
And
20-hour edits.
yeah, that used to really get to me. And then after we had our chat in 2021, I flipped the way that I thought about that. And so
Mhm.
now when I send out
Yes.
a gallery or I send out a film, I'm not like thinking, oh, I hope they think it's great, or I hope, I'm not wanting feedback from them that's going to
Yeah.
validate like how good I am and how good I made the film or whatever. Now, when I'm sending it with this hope that
Mhm.
I hope it's everything they wanted for their family. Like I hope it's what they need for their family. I hope my hope when I send these things off is that, this will be something that I hope I've managed to meet their expectation that it will be something they treasure for years to come and are proud to show to their children. Not because of how I've made it, but
Yeah.
because of what it shows
Yeah.
their children of them
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
parent in that film. It's kind of taken
Oh,
it off me so much. And I think it's definitely improved me as a filmmaker as well, because
oh,
I'm
yeah.
not walking in there like you said. You spoke about how you go in as like a blank slate. It's easy to have these ideas and a shot list and all the things that you want to capture and how you want to do it, and then you walk in and like nothing goes to plan and it's different than you
Yeah.
expect. Whereas
Yeah.
if you walk in with no expectations, then you're open to what
Yeah.
happens and to allow them
Yeah.
to be where they're at, and then just
Yeah.
capture that for them. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's really kind of flipped my thinking. And I think that
There's
that's something that is I think it's a great way. I think it makes us better in how we serve our clients when we take our ego out of the equation
Yeah.
and bring it back to the why of why we do it and why we want to serve these clients.
Absolutely. Yeah. We talked about how fear and self-importance could be, it's not prescriptive, it's just possibly descriptive. In my own experience, shall I say, fear and self-importance is what was driving my notion of an ideal client at the heart. And so we kind of tracked those roots. But I love what you shared there, Kylie, and the ways that it's so courageous to be humble. It's so courageous and so hard to stay small in our picture, right? Like, especially when we're creating art from a very deep place and it feels so deeply personal to us. Like, it's like giving birth, in a sense. We're incarnating this work and it feels like our child by the time we've, delivered. And if they say that, it's like, if they don't say that child's beautiful, it's like, you're calling my baby ugly. You don't like my baby. So it's like, you have to release that, and I think in doing that, there is freedom. And I think I crave that freedom. I'm part of so many conversations with photographers that are, I think, struggling to they love the work, they love the creative process. But it's like the clients just keep getting in the way, in a sense, and they wouldn't say it that way. And I don't think that's how, I don't mean to be unfair. It's just is how it comes across, maybe, or how I'm interpreting. And I think we go into business with these, with this beautiful purpose and these ideals, shall we say, of preserving moments and memories for these clients, because we see humanity as art. Like, we see souls as something beautiful. But over time, and this is why I loved Unfiltered, because I got to speak to experienced, super talented photographers. Over time, we can build up a bit of a callus around our heart, where it becomes more about, like, clients become a means of our self-expression. And no longer are we seeing them as art in and of themselves. And I don't think that I can entirely blame the ideal client construct on that. I don't think, I think that there are some valuable aspects to the ideal client. I just think it's a contributor. And I think that for too long, our industry has just kind of nodded and agreed with the ideal client, but not really questioned it, in ways that it erodes sort of that clarity of vision that we need, maybe, as photographers.
And I think too, a lot of it comes down to, like, being conscious of making a decision about, like, what kind of business do you want to run, how do you want to serve your clients in a certain way, and understanding and accepting that if you want to run it in this way, that's absolutely the way you should run it. And if you want to run it in this way, that's the way you should run it. Like, there's no one right way to run a business. If you just want to get in, if you want to get in and photograph your clients and provide a certain type of service and just focus on this or that, absolutely 100%. But I think it's about just making sure that people make conscious decisions around that. I know some photographers who, they love to be able to, they love their work, they love what they do, but when they go home at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever, they don't want to think about photography, or they don't want to think about anything else. And they like, and then there are other people who want to run a job where, it's not just, working the 9 to 5, they're doing it at different times. And both ways are so valid. Exactly. And I think what it comes down to is that taking the time to sit and think and decide, what is it that I want? And am I running my business in that way? And the best way that serves me, and the best way that serves my family, and the best way that serves my clients. And that's not going to look the same for anyone. And I think it's just that understanding of knowing, where you want to be at, and then 100% claiming that. But I think you touched on something there, about, particularly for photographers who have been in the business for a while, and that feeling of, the clients almost getting in the way, or building up that callous around, like, they just become another bit of product in our business or whatever. I liken it, I think, a little bit to, I think anyone that's had a baby knows what it's like to go into a hospital and deal with the midwives in a hospital. And there's a very big, broad range of midwives, and you've got midwives who are who haven't been doing it for very long, and then you've got midwives who have been doing it for very long. And there's in the cohort of midwives who have been doing it for a long time, there are two very distinctive types. There is the type who have never lost their wonder for it and their service, and then there are the types who it's just become it's no longer a calling, it's just a job, it's just a way to make money. And there's that kind of forgetting that for them this might be the 1000th baby they've delivered, but for the woman in front of them, this is their first baby. You know, like, and you notice that if you've had one baby or a couple of babies and you've dealt with midwives, and you see those types. And I think that it's kind of like that with our business. It's the same for photographers as well. Like when we've been in our business for a while, it can be very easy to kind of be like, well, you know,
naturally,
like,
absolutely.
Exactly.
There's
and so
no
I think
finger pointing here. This is like a natural progression for, I think, any business owner. But, you know, it's almost like my talk, I thought, is like a state of a union address for our businesses, in the sense of like, I'm united with this business, but let's take a hard look at the roots of it and like biases, prejudices that are influencing some of my, if not actual decisions, some of the ways that what I bring into a session, right? Even if you're still going to book that troublesome client next year, you know, what biases and prejudices are you bringing in? Because really, like, our clients deserve for us to check that at the door. That nurse who's overworked and has, brought 3 other babies into the world that day has to check some of her fatigue at the door in order to celebrate this massive milestone with the family. And that's what our sessions feel like for our clients, are these massive milestones. Like, they're begging to be seen, as the soul flames they are. We're all here for such a short time. We're all just these flickering soul flames, and they're like, just celebrate me, And so when we think to ourselves, oh, you have older kids, I have no idea what to do with older kids, or, I can't believe you put your kid in that character t-shirt, or, like, we're just setting ourselves up, to not deliver, I think, the best work we can. And even if, like, really our work is unaffected, and I think sometimes with experience it won't be, it's sometimes deeper, right? The way that what gets eroded over time. And I just feel gone.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, I think, that's really great, because I think, you can look at it and you can go, and that's where coming back to like your why, and like, what kind of a service do I want to give my clients, and looking at like what's making you enjoy it. And if having your clients, say having your clients look a certain way and dress in a certain way and have a certain location is what you love, then figure out how you can shape your business to provide that exact service for the clients who want it. And so that you're providing it in a way that brings you, that gives you joy in that service to the clients. And it's the same thing where if that's not what you want to do, it's thinking about, well, what do I want to provide those clients? And no matter how you run it and how you do it, looking deep inside, deciding, how are you going to best serve your clients? How are you going to do it so that you can serve them with an open heart and a happy heart, and not feel burnt out, and not feel like your clients are a burden? Because once they do start to feel like a burden, then people can feel that, and that's when you can get that resistance and that hard bit, and things stop being fun. And what's the point of doing it if it's not fun, right?
No, I know. And even if they never feel it, Kylie, like, we become disenchanted with our business because our business is the client. They're just it just goes hand in hand. So even if they never feel that from us, and you pray they don't, because you're a professional after all, So buck up and shoot the session the best you can. But like over time, I think what stands to road is just your enchantment with the business, because you've stopped to like
and that's
really
where I
appreciate
think
the uniqueness and the individuality of the client. But I'm really glad, so glad you brought up that point, because I was sure to raise that in the talk of like, if you have a studio business and if you have a client closet and you really drill down on like your client guide, by all means do that. Like, your clients are coming to you for exactly that visual voice. You need, like, we need you at the table, bringing that art into the world. It's exactly what your clients want. Don't change a thing. That's not the message. The message isn't everyone should be a documentary photographer and, eager to, photograph families and whatever they rolled out of it. That's not like the message. You do you, but in the context of that, within the context of the business you've built and the visual voice you've established, like, just love them well, because we have so much more. Like, we don't just create magic with ideal clients. If you say that, if you think that and believe it, then you're selling yourself short, because I know as a photographer, you have almost that second eye, right? Like that way of seeing so beautifully past the noise. I know as a photographer that you're a deep empath. And so you thus have a big heart. And I know as a photographer, especially experienced one, your art is more resilient than that. Don't sell yourself short. You can make magic with non-ideal clients. And that's where that's the song in my heart. That's what I'm reluctantly saying out there as I like put it out and then like step back and wait for the
and that's where I think knowing and being really clear on like how you want to serve your clients and how you want to serve them in a particular way is so important. So, like take myself, for example. I am not so a photographer who does incredible sunset shoots with beautiful client wardrobes and these amazing dresses. I am not that kind of person, but I have wanted those photos. And so I have seeked out a photographer that does that. And when you find the right one, and when they can look beyond me, who's, wearing my bright pink and, got my bright pink hair and is crazy and all the rest of it. And they can see me for who I am and understand the need that I have to have those photos, because I want to see myself in the way that they see their clients. And the very best ones are able to provide an experience that makes me feel comfortable doing it, and that makes me into that. That in the end, I am their ideal client, I guess, but not, in that way. Do you know what I mean? It's like not closing yourself off to someone like me who you might look at and go, woo, I don't know about that.
I mean, they'd be crazy, but now I know what you're saying. Absolutely.
And I
feel that way with older kids. I feel like I'm not everyone's ideal client anymore with older kids. And that's hard to come to terms with. So
and the best photographers who are able to do that are the ones who have taken that step back and taken that time to really examine, what it is that how can I be the ideal photographer for the people that seek me out? And that idea that instead of thinking about our ideal clients, we think about how can we be people's ideal photographer for what they're seeking in that moment. And it's different all the time. And even for the same person, they might want a particular type of thing one year, and then they might want something different the next year. I think it's such that we could talk about it for days and days and days. It's such a broad topic, but I think it's one of the things that why your talk was so loved at Unfiltered, because it is thinking about it in a way that's different to how we've always been told to think about it by experts and marketing people and all the rest of it, and it's sometimes uncomfortable to think that, oh, maybe I could do things differently. And I know sometimes when I read something and if I feel a particular kind of resistance to it, that's when I know I need to actually like dig a little deeper and go, well, hang on a minute. Why is that kind of irking me? Why is that idea irking me? And what kind of little truth nugget is in
Mm,
there maybe that I can take away. And I know, like, from when we first spoke of our podcast, and you spoke about this idea of, being a blank slate and not caring about whether we get instant feedback from our clients about how much they love things and whatnot, that really convicted me. And I
mm,
thought about it for a long time, and I thought, well, why is this? And I realized because, for me, my
that fear.
ego was,
Yeah.
and that, yeah, that was, getting in the way. And it's something that, it was uncomfortable to sit with
Yeah.
when I,
Yeah.
like, when I first started thinking about it. And for other people, it might be something different. It might be a
Yeah.
different thing that, because we hear words and we hear ideas, and
Mhm.
we put our own perspective and life experience on it. And so we
Yeah.
may be convicted in different ways. But that's what
Yeah.
I love about, particularly when you spoke at Unfiltered, is because it gave people just something to think about and something to really mull over. And Unfiltered was the perfect space for that, because then they also had that time to, like, talk about it and talk about how they were feeling with other
Mhm.
photographers who are at a similar point in their careers and in their experiences and things. So yeah,
I was I was worried about, I hoped for soft hearts. I was so worried about how I'd be received because again, you don't want to come off accusatory. That's not at all the message.
mm-hmm.
Um, I'm longing for their fulfillment. And I've learned, I described it as a detour sign. I'm like, listen, I have made some massive mistakes and I gave stories to support that. And here's this me holding a detour sign, like, to avoid these mistakes. I've found such joy and freedom and deep fulfillment and embracing this and I feel free to create. I'm freed from like the fear of whether they like my work. I just trust that if they've come to me and they see me worthy of their investment, their hard-earned dollars, that and knowing myself well enough that I'm going to do the best work I can, that it's going to work out. It usually does. But I will say that, like,
Yep.
you just said that used words like convicting or hard to hear. And let me tell you that my own words are hard to hear. I shared just before we hit record on this podcast that it's been a rough 2 months since Unfiltered. It kind of felt like everything I shared and everything I'm saying here was put to the test. It
Mm-hmm.
has been a really rough go. I've had a tough fall of it's been pretty breathless. So I'm shooting a lot and I'm just weary, but also I've had some challenging sessions, quite honestly. A lot of them have felt like family therapy, and where you're just facing that headwind and you're just
Mm-hmm.
trying to make the pieces come together. And I'm dual shooting photos and films. And so I'm already multitasking like crazy. And now I'm
Yep.
dealing with a dear boy who's terrified of airplanes. And we're only 5 miles from an airfield, who's melting down every 5 minutes. And you know what does that do for me though? Like, as I'm going through this fall and I'm having one difficult challenge after another, I even disappointed a client 2 weeks ago because I didn't reschedule an indoor home shoot on a rainy day. And she was just really grieved about that. And so I'm trying to make up for that. And that hurts my heart. I want to meet her expectations. And yet again, I'm reminded humbly how I failed her. And I, have failed other clients. And that breaks my heart. But what those experiences do are so shaping for me. And it would be really
Yeah.
easy to write off the family with this, anxiety ridden boy to be like, I can't work with this, right? Like, my art is more deserving of, compliant kids, or, like, things should flow better. And maybe I won't book them next year if I have lots of inquiries. I guess I'm challenging us to see it differently.
Yeah.
In showing up that night, I created a context for that anxiety to get hugged out of him. And at one point in the session, I just put my camera down and I said to him, I know you're having big feelings right now, and I'm okay with that. I want you to feel comfortable with me to express those big feelings. And I am so sorry that these scary planes keep going overhead. If we could jump in the car and get away from them, I would, but the sun is going down. You can show me how big your brave is if you feel like it, but if you don't feel it, you don't have to smile and you don't have to play along, and
Yeah.
just to be able to
Mm-hmm.
to make that kid feel seen and accepted with my words and my
Yeah.
presence, and also to have the mom hear those words. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't say this to pat myself on the back. I was so weary. I'm like, I just need one good, easy session, and I didn't get it, and that was hard. Um, but it's shaping, and our clients are just gifts. They're dear gifts. And when we see that, it stands to change us as
Yeah.
humans. We
Yeah.
have this incredible capacity to love. And my challenge for photographers is like, just hang tight to that purpose that drove you into business. I really think that's what's gonna, it's not what your success will hinge on, right? You can have this crazy successful business and not listen to a word I say, but is that going to lead you to that deeper fulfillment we all long for in the work we produce?
Yeah. It's such a it can be so hard sometimes to think about like the long-term thing, like what are we achieving, like in your talk you
Yeah.
spoke about like when you finish that last film, when you finish that last gallery, knowing this is the last one you're ever going to do, like how do you want to feel when that happens? What kind of a legacy? And it's such a I think it's something that is very easy to not think about, but I think it's I'd never thought about that until you mentioned it at the retreat, and again, it's something it's percolated in my brain for the last couple of months. Like,
Yeah.
what is that? Like, when all is said and done, when I make that last film for a family, what legacy do I want those films that I've made to have? You know,
I love
and
that.
it's not about, and at the end of it for me, and I've really thought about, it's not about me. I don't want the legacy to be
Yeah.
about the films that I made and how good they were and how good a filmmaker I was or whatever. The
Yeah.
legacy that I want those films to be is that they showed people, they are time capsules, and they are visual records of people who existed, of people who were loved,
It's crazy powerful.
and
Yeah.
of people who will be
Yeah.
missed when they're gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's,
You're contributing to like the record of humanity. It's just
yeah,
amazing.
I want them
That's a
to
high
be
calling.
remembered. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's, and that's not the same purpose for everyone, but for me, that's my purpose. And it's really, helping me to think about like what I want to do going forward. How do I want to run this business?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I encourage people who are listening, if you haven't thought about this before, maybe have a think about it and see where those thoughts lead you. If something that you've heard us talk about is, spark something in you, or you felt a bit of resistance to it, like, don't be scared of that. Like, sit down and examine it and think, like, why am I resisting this, and where could it lead me, and how could it make the work that I produce better? How could it make how I run my business better? How could it make how I serve my clients better? And take what you need. I always say
Yeah.
that, running a business is like parenting. There are a million different ways to do it, and everybody has
Oh, true.
advice on the way to
Absolutely.
do it. And what
That's
you need to
important.
do
Technology.
is you need to listen to everything that you can, and then just take the bits that speak to you
Decide
and
exactly.
work
Oh,
for
yeah.
you.
And
Yeah.
toss all of this if it doesn't. I think the challenge is just to like stay open, maybe to varying viewpoints. Yeah, I want to leave like with a story. It's this such a strong imagery. I didn't get to share this story in the talk, so now it feels like there's a space. Um, so Jenny in the network, in our FilmingLife network, she's a fellow filmmaker out of Nashville. She had a session that just really spoke to my heart, and I asked actually if I would have permission to share it during the talk, and then I ran out of time. I never thought I could fill an hour and a half, and I did, or nearly.
The time goes
And
so much quicker than you think.
wow, it was like something hit play in me, and I woke up at the end. But in any case,
Yeah.
she had this session that has just stayed with me. She photographed this lovely woman, Bryson, young, beautiful, who was dying of an immune disorder. Basically, her body was like in constant anaphylaxis, right? So everything caused her body to just like overreact, go into like big inflammation. And in the call with the mother of this woman, so I guess the mother was the client, and she booked her because her daughter was dying. the mother said, this is going to feel like a really unusual session. You're going to arrive, but you're going to need to take off your clothes. You're going to need to shower in Bryson's apartment. You're going to need to put on clothes that we've laundered in special detergents. You'll have to remove all hair products, makeup, and go into that session in that manner. That's the only way. Like, she's already hanging on to life, but
a completely clean slate.
Completely. Like, it's the only way that you're going to spare her a reaction. Jenny, of course, was like, yes, like, sign me up, I'll do this. But that image for me of Jenny going into that session, and I have had these deathbed sessions, and they are shaping, informative, and they are amazing. I definitely recommend, like, nothing will like till the soil of your heart like that, because that veil is so thin between the here and the hereafter. But in any case, so that image for me of Jenny going in and not her own clothes, like ill-fitting clothes, no makeup, her hair is wet, right? She is stripped down as a photographer, all the things that make us feel powerful and on top of our game. Like, she didn't have, all she had was an open heart and a camera, right?
Yeah.
And I want to be Jenny. I want to be that. I want to go into a session so stripped of my ego, in a sense, right? That I am just, my heart's flailed open for story, because the human story is all leading in one direction. Like, we're all walking each other home, right? So, if we see every client like Jenny saw Bryson, what will that do to our business? What will it do to our creativity? What will it do to us humans? Because right now we are in a culture where everyone to the right is like far right, and everyone one step to the left is far left, and we're polarized all over the place, right? What would it do to see that person who sees their world a little different, as the woman dying in bed from a disease she couldn't conquer, right? Like, there's so much big picture here for us. And I'm sorry, but as creatives, like, we have that heart that can wrestle with these questions. Like, we're made for these questions. So
and I think that's the crux of it right there. I think when you can run any kind of business in any kind of way, but when you strip everything else away, and take all of that away and all of the expectations, and you just bring it down to you and a camera and witnessing what's in front of you and recording that for the people who love those people, that's that's what it's about. And I think if you kind of then build your business around that, and no matter in what way it is, whether you're shooting in a studio with backdrops or posed, or you've got a beautiful client wardrobe, or you're going in completely documentary style, I think at the end of the day, when we're stripping ourselves of down to just being that camera, that's where we're able to really serve our clients. And that's where I think the very best photographers, the ones that create such beautiful work in whatever genre and in whatever way, they're really doing that. And I think that that's something that we can all think about how we can do that for our clients and going forward.
Wow, and
amazing.
I'd argue further that beautiful work can be done if you never ascribe to any of this. Your art can be will knock my socks off regardless, right? I just hope for you the satisfaction I feel, and the deep underlying purpose. I would hope that for you. If you don't hope it for yourself, there's other ways to find it. It doesn't have to be just ascribing to all this, but I have to think of, like, Christmas is coming soon, and I always think of that scene in The Christmas Carol where, like, Marley comes to Scrooge, right? And he's all shackled by, like, I don't know, his agony, what he'd forged himself for life. And he says, mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, benevolence were all my business. That scene? And the dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business. And I just, like, I don't want to find out too late that truth. I want to live that truth every single day. Marley's truth, I want to live out in business from here to the day I do push back from my computer and send the last gallery. I really, our clients are art, and there's such a freedom in seeing them that way. And just kind of staying small in our picture. I just want to be seen as art when I hire a photographer, right? It's 2
Yeah.
on 10.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what mom said.
Exactly. Oh, I love it.
Thank
I
you,
love
Carly.
chatting with you about this. And for those of you
Um,
who are listening, if um, even if you can't come to Unfiltered in 2024 or, 2025 even, like if you can find a way to get to something that will allow you to have this time to sit and think about these questions and talk about it with other people that are running businesses and whatever, I really encourage you to do it. If you are thinking about coming to Unfiltered, we have the wait list on the website, unfiltered.au, because, it's not just about like having a 3-day, 4-day junket. Like it's about really having a chance to sit and think about these big questions and, reflect on your life and on your business and what you want. And it's always good, I think, and beneficial to take that time to do that and ask those questions of yourself. And it'll make you a better person. It'll make you a better mother. It'll make you a better parent. It will make you a better business owner. And probably just make you a better person. Basically, if you come to Unfiltered, you'll become a better person.
There you go. Wow, could that be your tagline?
There you go.
Sign me up. Take my money.
That's a big claim. I know. It's a big.
Oh, we're just all impressed. That's totally
Well, thank you so much for chatting with us, Amy.
Thank you, Kylie.
Before you go, I'd love to say, I'd love to ask you, just if anyone out there is thinking about and grappling with these questions, what would be your starting point? I know that's a big question. I'm putting you on the spot.
You were breaking up right there, so let me make sure I heard it. If you're grappling with this question, what would be your starting point is what I heard.
Yeah, like what would you say to people to just, what would be their first step?
I love
like
that.
what?
I love that. I would write down your expectations, the expectations you bring into sessions. This could be that, dad leaves his phone in the pocket, that the family's beautifully connected, that they actually read your client guide, that they send you those 3 paragraphs of things, that they write that review, like just write it out. You'll be surprised. I did this. Like, you'll be surprised how many expectations you're carrying in your heart and bringing into sessions. And potentially those expectations, I would argue, are clouding your vision. So I think awareness is the first step. I would encourage you to sit before a session and just really take pause, like just kind of create like the sacred space to like just really reflect on the family and what you learned of them in your questionnaire. Think about this family and a way you think about your family, hopes and dreams, and tied up in, their rascally kids. Think about, a marriage you know nothing about, but you hope the best for as the foundation of that family. Like, just dwell, like actually dwell on them. Like, don't think about them when they show up. Think about them, like pre-vision a family, not the perfect family, just pre-vision what you've learned about them in your questionnaire, so that you've almost downloaded them into your heart before they even show up. In doing that, I find however they appear, whatever mood their kids are in, whatever honestly mood the husband and wife are in, as you know, like how many couples fight on the way to a session, and it's so clear. So I'm already in. I'm all in on these people before, when I've taken that time and I've forced out all of my stuff, I've kind of checked my baggage at the door. And then during the session, like, just take yourself aside in a way that you have to as a parent all the time, right? Like, we're always like reacting in non-productive ways to our kids. What are those internal reactions? Obviously, we're hiding it because we're being professional. But what are those little internal, like, negative emotions that are bubbling just beneath the surface? Because if you don't take those to task quick, like your work may suffer. Maybe it doesn't. That's what I'm really trying to drive this point home. Your work may not suffer, but your heart will harden, guaranteed, and that more hardened, even if it's a tiny bit more hardened heart, you're going to take into the next session and the next. And if you think of that, like every session, you're building just a little more of a callus. Where does that land you in 10 years? So, and then and then after the session, you're at it again, because now you're having to replay, like, all of these images are scrolling by you. You're editing a film for 20 hours, and like, you're replaying in your mind all the things, all the disappointments that, the things that went south and didn't go as planned. And again, just set it aside, write it on a piece of paper, rip it up, whatever it takes. Like,
Yep.
just be so very mindful. I think we're so mindful of the art, but we forget that art comes from a deep place. And when we nurture that deep place in these ways, like, I think good art will still be produced regardless, but like, maybe truer art that's, I don't know, authentic to the family. It's hard to say that. I don't want to draw those lines. I don't think it's a direct line, I just think you're going to be generally a happier business owner. How about that?
Yep. And that's what we
leave
all
it there.
want.
That's really what we want, because this is, we spend too many hours at it not to love. Let's not be disenchanted with our businesses. That's not a happy place.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Amy. I know that, for a lot of people, it's something that they maybe haven't thought about. It's not a concept that has kind of crossed their mind. And I think it's so great to be able to share that and just give people an opportunity to, think about their business and how they run it and how they deal with their clients in maybe a way they haven't thought about before, because that's always a good thing.
Yeah, it's good for me too. I'm challenged by all of this, but thank you for the conversation.
No worries. And for those of you, again, who are unsure about how this is going, feel free to reach out to Amy or I. If you're an Academy member, we'd love to chat about this more in the Academy. We're always happy to chat, so you can reach out to us in the Academy or via our websites or social medias, all of that. It'll be in the show notes. But yeah, thank you, Amy. And hopefully we will chat again soon.
I look forward to that. Thank you. Be well.